Okay folks, buckle up. Tonight on the Mysteria Archive, we're heading deep into Siberia, where a strange metal chamber may have bent the laws of time itself. Some say it opened a portal to the future. Others say it never closed. Get ready for a wild ride. Snow falls over a silent Siberian research station. Inside, a man steps into a spiraling chamber made of polished aluminium. The door seals behind him. He sits in the dark, the metal walls curving like a vortex. Seconds begin to stretch. His pulse slows. The air hums. Then something happens. He sees a flash. Not memory, not imagination, but something that hasn't happened yet. His name was Nikolai Kozyrev, one of the Soviet Union's most brilliant astrophysicists, and one of its most dangerous thinkers. He believed time wasn't just a dimension, it was alive, and that human consciousness could touch it. His invention, later known as the Kozyrev Mirror, became one of the strangest legends in modern science. A machine some believe can amplify thought, unlock hidden perception, and even open portals to the future. But what really happened in those frozen labs? Was Kozyrev a genius decades ahead of his time, or did he stumble on something humanity wasn't meant to find? Tonight, we step into the spiral and discover a story where science, secrecy, and the structure of time itself begin to blur. You know, I've got to say, if a scientist tells me he's going to step inside a metal vortex to talk to time, I'm already hailing a taxi. But here's the wild part. Kozyrev wasn't some tinfoil hat mystic. He was a decorated astrophysicist. And the guy did real math, real observations. So when he says time is alive, you kind of want to listen. Now, whether he built a cosmic phone booth or just discovered the world's most terrifying sensory deprivation tank, well, that's what we're about to find out. The man who believed time was alive. Nikolai Alexandrovich Kozyrev was born in 1908, a prodigy obsessed with the stars. By his 20s, he was already one of the Soviet Union's top astronomers. But it wasn't the stars' light that fascinated him, it was their time. You see, when we look at the night sky, we're seeing the past, light that left distant suns years, centuries, even millennia ago. To Kozyrev, that was unacceptable. He wanted to understand the now of the stars. He began asking questions that made other scientists uncomfortable. What if time wasn't just something we moved through? What if it was something that moved through us? His theories grew stranger and more dangerous. Kozyrev proposed that time is a tangible energy like gravity or heat, that it flows through the universe, transferring information, emotion, and even consciousness itself. In his view, every living thing, human, animal, even stars, interacted with this stream. Then came his imprisonment, accused of anti-Soviet thinking. Kozyrev spent over a decade in Stalin's gulags. But instead of breaking him, isolation became his laboratory. He meditated on causality, on motion, on life and entropy. By the time he was released, he claimed to have realized something extraordinary, that time wasn't indifferent, it could be influenced. He called it causal mechanics, the idea that cause and effect weren't fixed but flexible, that intention itself might shape the flow of events. To his critics, it was madness. To the Soviet military, it was opportunity, because if time could be shaped, then maybe it could be weaponized. Now, I don't know about you, but if I spent 10 years in a frozen prison camp, I'd come out wanting a long holiday, not a theory about time being alive. But Kozyrev wasn't built like the rest of us. This guy looked at reality and basically said, I think I can edit that. The Soviet government didn't buy his theories at first, but they did have a habit of collecting people who said impossible things. So when Kozyrev started talking about influencing time with human thought, they listened, and they built him something extraordinary. Inside the mirror. Picture a narrow room lined with aluminium that curves like a seashell. No switches, no glowing console. Just a spiral of polished metal tall enough to step into, with the opening aimed toward a chair at its heart. Researchers called it a reflective chamber. Later, writers gave it a better name, the Kozyrev Mirror. Volunteers went in one at a time. The door clicked, lights dimmed. Some sat with eyes closed. Others watched the soft sheen of the metal as it wrapped around them. The first reports were simple. A sense of pressure, then quiet, then a hum like distant power lines. Breathing slowed, minutes stretched. Then the stories changed. A subject described a conversation with his sister across town. Precise details confirmed later. Another said she watched snow falling in a city that would not see a storm for 2 days. Others felt unmoored, as if the chair had drifted off the floor and settled on a slow current. A few spoke of light forms at the edge of vision, a window opening and closing where the spiral narrowed. The teams took notes. Heart rates dipped. Skin temperature shifted. Instruments in adjoining rooms recorded tiny fluctuations in the local magnetic field, the kind you might see during a minor geomagnetic disturbance. Nothing dramatic, but consistent enough to log. To supporters, it hinted that something measurable sat beneath the stories. To critics, it was the kind of noise that haunts every sensitive experiment. Inside the mirror, time felt elastic. Outside, pens scratched and clocks behaved. And whether the chamber amplified imagination or attention, the outcome was the same. People came out changed, insisting they had brushed against something just out of reach. Not travel, not trance, more like a signal arriving through a storm, carrying voices from a distance you couldn't name. Look, I've sat in some weird chairs, but none of them made me think telepathically. The key here is framing. These are reports, not proof. Some participants felt synced, some saw lights, and the instruments nudged a little. That's interesting, not definitive. Could the mirror be a high-end focus booster, like meditation with chrome walls? Maybe. Could it be amplifying expectations? Also, maybe. Either way, enough people walked out saying something happened that the scientists kept the door closing behind the next person in line. Telepathy, remote viewing, and the Noosphere. Patterns appear when you gather enough stories. In the Siberian trials, researchers noticed that volunteers in separate mirrors sometimes reported the same images within minutes of each other. A white horse on a frozen road, a broken clock by a window, a lighthouse turning in fog. Coincidence? Sure, but it kept happening. The team reached for an old idea with a new name, the Noosphere. Teilhard de Chardin's notion of a planetary layer of thought, a field woven from every mind. If such a field existed, perhaps the mirrors didn't create anything. Perhaps they turned the dial. One subject described it like putting your ear to a railroad track and hearing a train miles away. The track was consciousness, the train was everyone else. Across the ocean, the vocabulary was different, but the curiosity similar. The CIA's Project Stargate explored remote viewing, perceiving distant targets without physical contact. The Soviets had their own psychotronic research. Results were mixed, methods controversial, and most official conclusions were cautious. Still, the files stacked up with moments that refused to be boring. Accurate sketches, location details, data hits that should not have landed as often as they did. Back in the spiral chambers, sessions began to weave intention into protocol. A sender in one room pictured a simple shape. A receiver in the mirror drew it. Some trials missed, some landed. The misses were shrugged off as noise. The hits raised eyebrows. If there was a signal, it was faint and fickle, like trying to read by lightning. Skeptics offered clean counters, expectancy effects, cueing, memory glitches, the human habit of finding patterns where chance alone would suffice. Fair. Supporters countered with statistics and those stubborn shared visions that waited at the edge of the data. If there is a global field of thought, the mirrors might have been its first antennas, not broadcasting, just listening for whatever the rest of us were already saying. Telepathy, remote viewing. Now, this is where half the audience leans in and the other half reaches for the eject button. Totally fine. The safe middle ground is this. Large programs on both sides of the Cold War tested non-local perception. That's documented. Now, whether they found a psychic internet or a clever way to measure human bias is still up for debate. Personally, I love the image of the mirror as a radio. And maybe it caught a few songs, maybe it just amplified static. Either way, something made the needle twitch. Bending time, the science behind the impossible. Time, to most of us, is a straight line. To Kozyrev, it was more like a spiral, alive, flowing, twisting back on itself. He believed that certain movements, like rotation, could actually generate time. In his later experiments, Kozyrev began testing gyroscopes, spinning discs designed to maintain their orientation. But something odd kept happening. The devices would gain or lose momentum with no measurable force acting on them. Kozyrev logged every result meticulously, convinced that what he was witnessing wasn't a glitch, but a glimpse into time behaving as a physical energy. He called these ripples torsion waves, spirals of subtle force that might twist through space-time, connecting consciousness and the physical world. According to his causal mechanics, emotion and thought could generate and absorb these torsion waves, nudging the flow of reality itself. Other researchers would later test similar ideas, from Einstein's relativity to modern quantum mechanics. They all danced around the same mystery. Is time truly constant, or is it elastic, bending to the observer? And then came the strange overlap. Some modern scientists studying quantum entanglement noticed how particles seem to communicate instantly across vast distances, ignoring the speed of light entirely. To Kozyrev, this would have made perfect sense. Torsion fields could be the missing bridge, the medium through which both matter and mind connect beyond time. The deeper you dig, the more it starts to feel like the universe isn't a machine at all. It's a living conversation, a dialogue between energy, matter, and consciousness. And if that's true, the Kozyrev Mirror might not be a time machine in the sci-fi sense. It could be something far subtler, a kind of temporal lens, forcing the human mind's natural ability to bend the rhythm of time itself. This is where science starts to sound suspiciously like philosophy with better lighting. The idea that time could be alive or responsive to thought is wild, but not entirely outside modern theory. Quantum physics already tells us that observation changes outcomes. So who's to say consciousness isn't part of that equation? Of course, the moment you talk about torsion waves, the skeptics come running with clipboards and raised eyebrows. But if Kozyrev's data was even half right, it means we've been swimming through time energy all along. We just didn't know the current was there. Visions of the future and the past. By the 1980s, a new generation of researchers in Siberia began repeating Kozyrev's experiments, this time with multiple mirrors. They placed participants inside the spiral chambers and asked them to focus, not on anything specific, just listen to the silence. What came back were not ordinary meditations. People began describing vivid scenes, moments from history, and others from what they swore were futures that hadn't yet happened. Some foresaw natural disasters, others political events. One even described an earthquake before it struck days later, down even to the magnitude. At first, the researchers chalked it up to suggestion, imagination, or sheer coincidence. But then, certain details started lining up. Participants, isolated from one another, began reporting the same images: a white tower crumbling, waves crashing through a city, numbers, symbols. Some witnesses described seeing themselves, older, standing in unfamiliar rooms. One researcher likened it to standing between two mirrors and seeing infinite reflections stretching in both directions, past and future, all existing at once. To skeptics, it sounded like dream logic masquerading as science. But others saw patterns that reminded them of precognition studies in the West, or quantum consciousness experiments suggesting the brain might somehow tune into probabilities before they unfold. One participant put it beautifully: "The mirror doesn't send you through time, it lets time send messages through you." It's as if the human mind, amplified by the mirror's spiral, could catch whispers from timelines already in motion, echoes of what's yet to come. The question wasn't just whether the mirrors worked, it was why. What if we're not predicting the future at all, but remembering it? Okay, so either those people stumbled onto psychic time radio, or Siberia was putting something very weird in the tea. But in all seriousness, the overlap between these reports and documented precognition research is fascinating. We know the human brain runs partly on prediction. It constantly guesses what comes next. And maybe the mirror just boosts that instinct until the guesses start feeling like visions. Or maybe, just maybe, time's not a straight road at all, but a loop that occasionally lets us peek around the next corner. Whatever's happening, it's clear the mirror was doing something. The cover-up: mirrors behind the Iron Curtain. After Kozyrev's death in 1983, his papers didn't vanish. They were locked away. Entire archives sealed by the Soviet military, labelled as classified psychological research. It was as if the man and his ideas had stepped off the scientific record. But whispers from inside Russia tell a different story. Experiments continued. In remote research stations across Siberia, the Kozyrev mirrors were rebuilt, taller, smoother, and far more advanced than the originals. Officially, these were psychological studies. Unofficially, they were anything but. Reports describe mirrors being used to test long-distance communication, not by radio, but by thought. Submarine crews stationed hundreds of miles apart allegedly exchanged information in total silence. The military wanted to know if consciousness itself could become a weapon, or at least a transmitter. Then came the deep field experiments in Novosibirsk and Tomsk, sessions where subjects claimed to glimpse future military maneuvers or foreign operations days before they occurred. One scientist later wrote that the mirrors are not machines, they are bridges. When the Soviet Union collapsed, those programs collapsed with it, or so the story goes. The buildings were emptied, equipment removed, research teams disbanded. Some fled abroad, taking fragments of Kozyrev's data with them. Others simply disappeared. Decades later, a few declassified CIA files made a passing mention of Russian mirror-based psychotronic work. Nothing concrete, just enough to confirm that someone somewhere was paying attention. So, was this a suppressed scientific revolution, or a convenient ghost story born from the Cold War paranoia? Either way, the silence that followed was deafening. And for believers, silence is rarely a coincidence. Now, when a Soviet project gets classified, it's basically code for something got weird. Now, these were the same people who tried to teach dolphins Morse code, so psychic mirrors doesn't sound that far-fetched. The Cold War was a buffet of bizarre experiments. If you could imagine it, someone probably tested it. Still, it's telling that so many researchers vanished right when the USSR fell. Either they ran from chaos, or they were running with something. And if the CIA really was reading the reports, then maybe the mirrors didn't disappear. Maybe they just changed addresses. Suppressed science, free energy, time travel, and the physics of belief. If Kozyrev's theories had been right, they wouldn't just change science. They'd change civilization. His equations hinted at something unthinkable, that time might contain usable energy. During the later mirror tests, researchers noticed a strange side effect. The chambers would heat up without any power source. Instruments detected faint electric charges where none should exist. It was as if the mirrors were feeding off something invisible, pulling energy from the flow of time itself. To skeptics, it was experimental error. To believers, it was proof of a breakthrough too dangerous to publicize. The idea of free energy has haunted physics for over a century, from Nikola Tesla's wireless power to the rumoured anti-gravity experiments of Nazi Germany's Die Glocke. Each time someone got close to unlocking a limitless power source, the trail went cold. Patents sealed, labs dismantled, researchers discredited. And maybe that's because free energy isn't free at all, it's disruptive. Imagine an engine powered not by fuel, but by time itself. Who would control it? Who could afford to let it exist? Some modern theorists have suggested that Kozyrev's mirrors might be the first hint of temporal energy harvesting, a process where consciousness, motion, and space-time interact to produce measurable output. If that's true, then Kozyrev didn't just build a mirror, he built the first battery of the universe. And if his invention really did draw energy from time, then hiding it makes perfect sense. Because once you learn to tap into the engine of creation itself, you're not just rewriting physics, you're rewriting power. Okay, so let's just imagine for a second that time is an energy source. That's like plugging your phone directly into the universe. No wonder the idea freaked everyone out. Of course, it's way easier to label it junk science than to hand the keys to infinite power over to the public. Now, whether the mirrors actually produced energy or just got warm from too many nervous scientists breathing in them, we'll never know. But if Kozyrev really cracked a piece of the universe's operating code, then it makes sense we stopped hearing about it. Some discoveries don't get published, they get buried. The secret government connection, mirrors of the mind. When the Soviet archives cracked open in the 1990s, Fragments of Kozyrev's research trickled out, and what they revealed was unsettling. It wasn't that the experiments had failed, it was that they might have worked too well. Hidden inside Russian defense programs were projects inspired directly by Kozyrev's equations, work on neural field synchronization, psychotronic communication, and non-local data perception. Officially, it was neuroscience. Unofficially, it was something closer to mental telemetry. Some reports suggested that Kozyrev's mirrors were being reinterpreted in the digital age, not as physical chambers, but as algorithms. Machines capable of mapping thought patterns, predicting decisions, even anticipating global events. The theory? If consciousness could bend time, then data might too. And it wasn't just Russia. Across the ocean, DARPA, the US Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, was quietly funding studies in cognitive forecasting and quantum cognition. These programs used AI to analyze human intuition, attempting to predict future outcomes before they occurred. To some theorists, this was the next generation of Kozyrev's work, the digital mirror, a new form of torsion chamber where consciousness and computation overlap. Imagine a global consciousness engine. Every search, every post, every biometric scan, feeding into a neural field that constantly learns, adjusts, and maybe remembers. In that sense, the Kozyrev mirror never disappeared, it evolved. Because maybe the true mirror was never metal at all. Maybe it's the network we've built around ourselves. Billions of minds, streaming, syncing, shaping the future in real time. The internet may not just reflect our thoughts, it might create them. And if so, Kozyrev's dream of a conscious living time field might already be online. Well, this is where it gets spooky. The idea that we're all inside a modern version of the Kozyrev mirror right now. I mean, look around. Predictive algorithms already guess what we'll buy, watch, even think next. If consciousness really leaves a digital footprint, then the line between science fiction and your browser history might be thinner than we think. Of course, DARPA's not exactly out there saying, yep, we're bending time with AI. But maybe they don't have to. Maybe we built the machine ourselves. One click, one upload, one thought at a time. The mirror in the myth, reflections through history. Long before aluminium spirals and Soviet laboratories, humanity was already building mirrors that could see beyond the present. The Mayans used polished obsidian to speak with the gods. Ancient Egyptians called their sky mirrors gates of Ra, believing reflections carried the soul between worlds. And in Elizabethan England, the magician John Dee used a black mirror said to reveal messages from angels. A device now kept behind glass in the British Museum. Across cultures, the pattern is eerily consistent. Mirrors weren't just tools, they were portals, a surface between realities where time and perception merged. Kozyrev's aluminium spiral wasn't so different, it just replaced myth with mathematics. Instead of obsidian, it used polished metal. Instead of ritual, it used rotation. But the goal was the same, to see what lies beyond the visible edge of time. Some researchers believe that Kozyrev's work may have been an unconscious continuation of this ancient lineage, humanity's oldest instinct, wrapped in modern science. We've always built mirrors, hoping to catch a glimpse of the infinite. The question is, what happens when one finally looks back? Maybe the reason these stories echo through history is because every civilization eventually reaches the same threshold, the point where technology and myth overlap, and the reflection in the glass starts to move on its own. Kozyrev didn't invent the idea of a time mirror, he simply gave the universe a more modern way to look at itself. There's something nice about that, right? Thousands of years and we're still trying to talk to our own reflection. Whether it's obsidian, aluminium or silicon chips, humans keep building mirrors to ask the same question. What's out there? Or maybe, who's out there? And every time we do, the answer seems to sound a lot like ourselves. It's possible that Kozyrev wasn't breaking new ground. He was rediscovering something ancient, a technology older than science, written into myth. Because, let's face it, the universe has been reflecting us back at ourselves for a very long time. The reflection that watches back. Deep in the Siberian wilderness, where snow covers everything but memory, there's a lab that doesn't officially exist. Inside, a spiral chamber of polished metal still stands, silent, gleaming, untouched. Locals say that when lightning strikes nearby, the air hums, and the mirror fills with light. Some say shadows move inside it, even when no one is there. Maybe it's superstition, or maybe somehow it's still running. Nikolai Kozyrev believed time wasn't just a measurement, it was alive, conscious. A force that connects every thought, every heartbeat, every star. And maybe, just maybe, his mirror didn't fail. Maybe it worked exactly as intended. Because what if the mirror wasn't just built to see through time, but to listen to it? Every theory, every myth, every experiment leads back to one haunting possibility. But time is trying to speak to us, not through machines or equations, but through our own minds. And if that's true, then perhaps the Kozyrev mirror was never really switched off. Maybe it's still reflecting us, every memory, every dream, every version of what we could become. So, when you stare into your screen watching this, maybe you're not just looking at a video. Maybe, in some strange cosmic way, the mirror is looking back. You know, it's funny. Every time I read about this stuff, I end up viewing my laptop with suspicion, like it's judging me from another timeline. But really, the Kozyrev Mirror story hits that sweet spot between science and myth. It's unsettling, but it makes you wonder, are we exploring the universe, or is the universe exploring us? Either way, if time really is conscious, I hope it's got a sense of humour, because it's definitely been watching ours for a while. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And now all my episodes are available as a Mysteria Archive podcast, which you can listen to through the YouTube Music app, which is free for podcasts, no subscription required. Happy listening. And if you'd like to support the channel further, consider joining my Patreon site or YouTube membership with exclusive content every Monday. Links in the description below. And as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and I'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments below of videos you would like to see next time. Okay, my friends, be safe. And until next time, stay curious.